Hey everybody, I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us for ILTV's weekly program, One-on-One with Alan Dershowitz. We want to give you, our viewers, a chance to have your questions answered by Professor Dershowitz, one of America's greatest legal minds. He's a leading expert on criminal and constitutional law, civil liberties, and the Arab-Israeli conflict. Hi, Professor Dershowitz.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. So let us begin. There is a lot of controversy on American campuses regarding Israel for a change. Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Tzipi Hotovely was scheduled to speak at Princeton University's Hillel House, but just a day before, her address was canceled following pressure from the campus's Alliance of Jewish Progressives, who actually put out a petition accusing Hotovely of being a racist. We have a student at Princeton University who has a question regarding the entire scandal.
Hello, Professor Dershowitz. My name is Sorel Anbar, and I'm a freshman at Princeton University. I was incredibly disturbed to see that at an institution that prides itself on academic freedom, some of my fellow students, including a few of my friends, signed a petition that sought to censor Minister Hotovely because they disagreed with her views. What was even more troubling was that the Center for Jewish Life revoked their invitation to a representative of the Jewish state and its people. What do these actions say about the future of free speech and open debate on college campuses? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's a great and very, very important question. This is the first time, to my knowledge, in American history that an Israeli speaker has been denied the right to speak on a campus by Jewish students, by students who presumably are members of Hillel, and by the Hillel rabbi. This could set a very dangerous precedent. The idea that you need a committee to decide who students are able to listen to and denying students the right to make their own judgment about a speaker. Look, I know the Deputy Foreign Minister. She was at my home. I helped her prepare for the Princeton talk. I encouraged her to make a centrist talk, what I call the 80% case for Israel, where their emphasis is on points of agreement among Israelis, right, left, and center, rather than points of disagreement. I think she was prepared to make that kind of a centrist talk. But these radical, extremist, censorial students, Jewish in this case, just didn't want to hear her point of view and didn't want other students to hear her point of view. What were they afraid? That some students might be persuaded? It is such a dangerous approach to education. One would expect more of Princeton students. These same students would certainly accept a speaker who made the anti-Israel case, even if they made it in an extremist way. And so the bias on campus is palpable. I had a recent experience myself. After the cartoon appeared demonizing me and painting me as a spider with, you know, my legs trampling Palestinians and holding an IDF soldier who was murdering a Palestinian. After that happened, an article appeared in the same newspaper, the Daily Cal, calling me a complicit in Israel's policies of deliberately murdering innocent civilians and saying I had blood on my hands. And I wrote a serious point-by-point response that I wanted to have published in the same newspaper, the Daily Cal, that published the blood libel, essentially, against me. And the Daily Cal said, no, we don't want our students to read your point of view. It's enough that they heard the point of view calling you a killer with blood on his hands. We don't have to present your point of view. And so they turned down my article, even though it was a point-by-point factual rebuttal. Fortunately, I have access to other media, and I publish it in a number of media around the country. And I hope that Cal Daily will be shamed, because it shows the bias of the newspaper and the bias of so many young people today in academia. They don't want to hear a discussion of Israel. All they want to hear is propaganda on one side. And we're miseducating a generation of future leaders, and we have to stand up against this kind of McCarthyite censorship, this time from the left, and this time by Jewish students. That's why this is such a serious matter, and that's why that was such an important question.
All right. Well, Professor Dershowitz, turning to our next scandal, a recording has just been released of former United States Secretary of State John Kerry, where he claims that the Israeli government doesn't really want peace with the Palestinians. Here's what he had to say.
the Palestinians have done an extraordinary job of remaining committed to nonviolence. And in fact, when the Intifada took place, they delivered nonviolence in the West Bank. This is overlooked by the general population because it is not a topic of discussion. Why? Because the majority of the cabinet currently in the current Israeli government has publicly declared they are not ever for a Palestinian state. If you don't have leaders who don't want to make peace, if the equation doesn't change, I'll be amazed if within the next 10 years, if we don't see some young leader come along who says we have tried nonviolence for the last 30 years and look, it hasn't gotten us anything. You gotta have a willingness to make peace. If there is a willingness to make peace, Omer, Barak, Rabin, Peres, people indicated how you do it.
I think that the Obama administration, particularly the Obama administration when Kerry was Secretary of State, was the worst administration in modern years in terms of foreign policy. They created a terrible dilemma for the world in Syria when the president didn't carry out his red line. They created a terrible dilemma for the world by allowing sunset provisions in the Iran deal. And so I don't really think that my friend John Kerry has a lot of credibility when it comes to deciding how peace should be made in the Middle East. I've also known Benjamin Netanyahu for more than 40 years, and I know that he desperately wants to be the one to bring about a peaceful two-state resolution so long as Israel is secure, so long as the Palestinian state is demilitarized, so long as there continues to be some Israeli military presence until there can be assurances that there will be no use of the West Bank the way the Gaza Strip has been used as a launching pad for rockets. So I think he's just dead wrong. And what I worry so much about that speech is it sounds to me like he's almost encouraging violence. What he's saying is, I would understand if in a few years a young leader came along and decided to engage in violence because nonviolence has gotten them nowhere. Nonviolence has gotten them everywhere. If you go to Ramallah, Ramallah is not occupied territory. Ramallah has no Israeli presence, military presence, police presence, or any other presence. It is an independent city in which business is thriving, in which you see cars driving, beautiful cars, you see high-tech stores. I wish John Kerry would go to Ramallah and understand that the Palestinians have gained an enormous amount. When you compare the West Bank to Gaza, you see the benefits the Palestinians have reaped from relative nonviolence. It hasn't been complete nonviolence, but relative nonviolence. And so I think my friend John Kerry is just dead wrong. I sat down with Abbas on a number of occasions. He won't say the following words. He won't say, I recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. He won't accept the UN resolutions of 1947 dividing mandatory Palestine into two states for two people, one the Jewish people and second the Arab people. He won't do that. And that's been the core of the reason. What John neglects to mention, too, is that in 1938, 1947, 1948, 1967, 2000, 2001, 2005, 2008, Israel was prepared to make the kinds of concessions that would result in a two-state solution. And every one of those occasions, the Palestinians turned them down. And so he's now saying that the blame is on the Israelis. Even the Prince of Saudi Arabia called the decision by Arafat to reject the 2000-2001 peace offer from President Clinton and Ehud Barak, called it a crime against the Palestinian people. And so the Palestinian leadership has never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And the idea of blaming it all now on the current Israeli administration is a complete negation of history and a complete negation of reality.
All right, Professor. Now, reports have just surfaced claiming that Israel is instructing its ambassadors around the world to support Saudi Arabia and take part in a diplomatic campaign against Iran and Hezbollah. This follows the sudden resignation of the Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri, who says he fears an assassination plot against him by the Iranian proxy Hezbollah. Israel and Saudi Arabia have never shared formal diplomatic ties. Is there a chance that that is going to change given the shifting alliances that we're seeing in the Arab world?
Well, two things are happening. One, we're seeing tremendously shifting alliances in the Arab world, the Sunni Shia break is greater than it's ever been in the past. Everybody is terrified of Iran. Iran is not North Korea. North Korea does not have hegemonic interests in the surrounding countries. Iran has hegemonic interests. They would like to take over Syria and Lebanon. They already have essentially done that. Parts of Iraq. They would like to also take over the Emirates and the Gulf states. And I think, therefore, the Sunni Arabs have a legitimate fear. And I think they will work beneath the surface with Israel to try to prevent that from happening. But if Israel were to be able to make some kind of a peaceful resolution with the Palestinians, I think we would see an immediate recognition by the Saudis, by the Emirates, by the Gulf states, by all the Sunni states of Israel. And I think we could see a bright, bright future. So the time has never been better for both the Israelis and the Palestinians. Palestinians, too, should fear Iran. Both the Israelis and the Palestinians to sit down, make compromises, because this is the only way to make peace. Make compromises and bring about a peaceful resolution. The time has never been better. The current administration is anxious to bring about peace. Jason Greenblatt and Jared Kushner both are very, very thoughtful and intelligent people who can really gain the confidence of both the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. So I would encourage Israel and the Palestinians to sit down and make some progress toward peace that will enhance the development of peaceful relations between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the other Sunni nations.
All right, Professor Dershowitz, turning to our next topic. This is a story that has been plaguing Israel for years now. In September of 2014, an Ethiopian-Israeli man crossed into the Gaza Strip from Israel. Avera Mengistu was then captured and interrogated by Hamas and has been missing ever since. Mengistu had crossed into the Strip on his own accord, but had been suffering from mental illness for several years. His family has been pleading for help, claiming the Israeli government is not helping return Mengistu because of his Ethiopian ethnicity. Now, here is a message from his cousin.
Hi, this is Avera Mengistu. I'm Yonit, and I'm a cousin and neighbor of the Mengistu family. I grew up with Avera. I knew him. He was a charismatic young boy. His illness was hard for the family, but it doesn't compare to what they are going through since he was captured. I see the mother, the father, the brothers and the sisters living a life in the shadow of his absence. Life has stopped for this family, and this is nothing compared to what Avera must be going through. Save him.
Now, before you respond, Professor, joining us now in the studio is Eli Bachal, who served as the chief legal advisor for the Israeli Security Agency, otherwise known as the Shabak or Shin Bet. Eli currently works at the Israel Democracy Institute, but has been volunteering his time as the member of the committee for Avera Mengistu alongside other members of the Wexner-Harvard program, such as your friend Danny Grossman and former Counsel General Nadav Tamir. Eli, thank you so much for joining us. Now, why isn't Israel taking more action to get this man released? We saw the Gilad Shalit prisoner exchange take place. How is this different?
I don't want to criticize anyone, and the government just nominated the new coordinator to negotiate, the chief negotiator regarding the Israelis that are captured by the Hamas. But I think that after more than 3 years that Avera Mengistu is there and there is no sign of life from him, it's time to push things forward and to give and to put a lot of pressure, international and in Israel, to bring anything from him, sign of life, and him back here to Israel.
But what's so interesting is that this doesn't seem to be a major issue here in Israel. The Israeli public isn't talking about this very frequently.
Well, that's a problem, and I think that we, the volunteers, are trying to bring more solidarity within the Israeli society and to the Jewish people. Tonight, the family is going to the US, participating in the General Assembly of the Jewish Federations in Los Angeles for this exact purpose, and then move to Washington, D.C. and to New York City to meet with officials, with congressmen, and others from the UN and trying to gain support to their struggle to see their son back home.
Mm-hmm.
Professor, why do you think that, you know, this man has not yet been released and Israel hasn't been working harder to make that happen?
Well, first, we don't know how hard Israel is working behind the scenes, but the one thing I would categorically reject, certainly from the American Jewish community, and I suspect from the Israeli Jewish community, I do not think this has anything to do with race or with his color. I'll tell you why. If he were a soldier who were captured and being held hostage, I think every American Jew and I think every Israeli would be demanding his immediate release. I think the distinction is not that he's Ethiopian and Gilad Shalit was not. It's that Shalit was a soldier and was captured. Here's a man who wandered as a result of tragic mental illness, but nonetheless wandered over the border illegally. It's a strong, compassionate case, but it's not as strong a case from the point of view of Israel's policy of leaving no one behind, never allowing a soldier to remain behind. I will work as hard as I can for Avera's release, but I don't think it should be blamed on race, certainly not race alone, because I really do believe to the depths of my heart that if an Ethiopian Jewish soldier were captured by Hamas during a battle or tragically killed and his body not recovered, I do think that Israel would be devoting as much effort to getting back a black soldier as a white soldier. And I'd have to see very, very strong evidence to the contrary to persuade me that race was the critical factor here, rather than his status as a non-soldier who wandered over the border as the result of mental illness. Compassionate, yes, but the strongest, as strong a case as Gilad Shalit, no, I don't believe it is.
So, Eli, what do you think that Israel needs to be doing right now to deal with this issue? And what are you doing more specifically?
First, there are friends of mine who belong to a circle calling the alumni of the Wexner Foundation. We were all at the Harvard Kennedy School, which was a great experience. And I think that we owe something to the society back. And we think that we, as people who are connected very much in the Israeli society, have the opportunity to raise more voice for the family, which is voiceless in a way, and to push them, to push the government to be more effective in releasing Avera Mengistu and the other soldiers and another Israeli citizen who is captured there. Mm-hmm. But the thing is about Avera, I think is basically it's a humanitarian topic. We have the International Red Cross, the United Nations, and others who claim that this is a violation of international law to keep someone mm-hmm. who is mentally ill and with no sign of life of him. And we want to bring the international community and to bring Israel to push this point very hard, meaning mm-hmm. we cannot tolerate this kind of and now when the Palestinian Authority and Hamas have an agreement, this is time to put a burden on the Palestinian Authority as well, because they cannot gain the whole game without releasing Avera Mengistu, which is just a mentally
ill man. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
No, I agree.
He was never a soldier or nothing.
Yeah, from a humanitarian point of view, I agree, and I think no effort should be spared to try to return him. He is an Israeli citizen. He is being illegally held in violation of all international law, and anything I can do to be helpful, please let me know, and I will.
Thank you very much, Professor Dershowitz.
Now, Mengistu is not the only missing Israeli being held by Hamas. You said that yourself, Eli. Hisham al-Sayed is a Bedouin Israeli who is also believed to have mental problems. He crossed into the Gaza Strip on his own accord as well, and has been held in silence ever since. And then Hamas is also holding the bodies of two IDF soldiers from the 2014 Gaza war, Oron Shaul and Hadar Goldin. Now, it looks like there may be a way to get Hamas to hand them over, since the terror organization wants something from Israel. They're demanding Israel to return the bodies of several terrorists that were killed in the recent bombing of a terror tunnel coming from the Gaza Strip. But the Israeli Minister of Defense says no negotiation will take place unless they return the soldiers' bodies first. Is this issue ever going to be solved?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, the Israeli Supreme Court has held that it would be illegal for Israel to hold innocent people hostages, as they tried to do in Lebanon to try to get Israeli soldiers or the bodies of Israeli soldiers back. There's a big difference between keeping live people, hostages who are innocent in prison, and negotiating about the return of bodies. I think Israel is entitled to hold on to the bodies of killed Palestinian terrorists, Islamic terrorists, and use them as part of a negotiation to get back the bodies of Israelis. And I'm not going to comment on how they conduct the negotiation. There are experts on negotiation that are doing this, but I hope the result will be to allow the bodies to be buried in Israel, the families to have some kind of closure and information about the status of those who were captured and imprisoned alive. Captured is not the right word. They were kidnapped. When you grab somebody who is a civilian and you hold them, that's just a crime, and a crime of a very, very serious nature. So I hope that the Palestinian Authority will do the right thing, and I hope the Israelis will press it to do the right thing.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Eli. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for our little interview. But Alan, we're going to end our program by throwing you a change-up. The World Series has come and gone, and both of our favorite teams, the Yankees and the Red Sox, didn't make it. Your childhood love, the Dodgers, did, however, but just like they did when you were growing up, they disappointed right at the end. There did happen to be a new wrinkle in this year's series before you say anything, and David Leishman from Kibbutz Gezer has something to ask you about it.
Sure.
Hi, Alan. My name is David Leishman. I'm originally from New York, but living on Kibbutz Gezer for over 40 years, the home of the first baseball field. Alan, you and I have probably been baseball fans all of our lives, and always rooting and supporting the great Jewish baseball players like Hank Greenberg and Sandy Koufax, who are really among the best. My son, Alon Leishman, grew up playing baseball at Gezer, but since he's 10 years old, has been playing on Israel's national team and actually coached and played with the World Baseball Classic for Team Israel. Today he's with the Seattle Mariners. We just spent so many wonderful hours watching baseball and the World Series and seeing the incredibly wonderful talent and power of two great Jewish baseball players, Jock Peterson of the Dodgers and Alex Bregman of the Astros. My question to you is, are we seeing a new surge of Jewish baseball superstars?
What a great question. Of course, I'm sleeping longer these days because I'm not staying up every night watching World Series games. This was one of the great World Series in history, except for Game 7, which was a little boring. But some of the other games were among the most exciting I've ever seen. And I've been watching baseball since 1945. And of course, my favorite season ever was 1947, the year Jackie Robinson broke in. And I got our rabbi to make a bracha for him, pretending that he was a new person in town who got a new job. And of course, I grew up down the block from where Sandy Koufax's father, Irving, moved and opened up a law practice. And I knew Sandy growing up, and my wife brought him over to our home for I think it was my 50th birthday. And so it was great to see Sandy in the stands looking so wonderful at the age of, I think, 82 or something like that. Jews have become normalized in America. Bregman, for example, grew up in Albuquerque and went to the same shul and the same Hebrew school that our dear friends, the Ashes, who live in Placitas, New Mexico, their kids went to school. So, you know, they've known this kid growing up. Friends of mine in Los Angeles have known him for a long time. He's an extraordinary player, an extraordinary third baseman, and an incredible hitter, and a very, very young man. Being Jewish and playing baseball is not remarkable. Being Jewish and playing basketball has become a bit remarkable, although Jews started the NBA, and the first teams in the NBA were dominantly Jewish. But today, baseball has become the sport that has more Jews proportionately than any other sport. So I think, yeah, we will see more Jews in baseball, and I hope we'll see them on winning teams.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Dershowitz. If you would like the professor to answer your questions, go to our Facebook page and submit them. We'll see you again next week.